Okay. Hey guys, my project was on designated hitters' effect on slugging percentage in Major League Baseball. The big picture. A team's slugging percentage in Major League Baseball was found to not be significantly affected in games when teams use a designated hitter. I did not expect this result. I Going into the research, I thought that the designated hitter would increase a team's slugging percentage in the games that it was used, but my research found otherwise. In my research, I did find two potential significant factors for a team slugging percentage, and that was home field advantage and the American League and the National League had a difference in slugging percentage as well, which was also significant. A little bit on why I did the research in the first place. Slugging percentage of a team is a main statistic when looking at a team or an individual's offensive output. For my research, I did a team's output. I also personally play baseball, and I look at my slugging percentage as well as my team slugging percentage to calculate performance and see how we do. So when I watch the Major League Baseball games, I also found curiosity in what might affect their slugging percentages. And along with that, throughout my time watching Major League Baseball, there has been a debate on whether people prefer the designated hitter rule or to not have the designated hitter in baseball. So I thought to combine both of these ideas and see if the designated hitter has an effect on a team's offensive output, and in particular, for my research, their slugging percentage. Also, when I looked into research on this topic, there really wasn't much in regards to any effect of the designated hitter, which I thought was interesting. Thankfully, I'm able to test this effect due to the interleague play, which is American League teams playing National League teams, which is a recent opportunity that I can take because it has not been around for very long. This gives the ability for my empirical strategy to be able to test interleague games separately and see if teams from both the American League and National League team slugging percentage is affected by the rule change. And in the next slide, I will describe more in detail what interleague play is, what slugging percentage is, and what a designated hitter is as well. So a little bit into what slugging percentage is. It's basically a weighted average on basically batting average. It's basically a weighted batting average. To calculate slugging percentage, you take and can you guys see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll walk you through kind of what slugging percentage is based on what hits you get. So you take a person, or in this case, a team's number of singles they hit. So that's when they get to the one base out of the hit. And then you add that to how many doubles a team gets, which is when they end up here. And you multiply the number of doubles times 2, which starts the weighted average. And then you add that to number of triples they get, multiply that number by 3. And then you add number of home runs they get, all 4 bases, and you multiply the number of home runs by 4. And then once you get that top number in the numerator, you divide it by the number of bats that team or that individual has. And like I said, in my research, it is team statistics. And slugging percentage is an important gauge to an individual team's offensive output, and power output. Into what a designated hitter is. Basically, the designated hitter rule is the ability to use another player on a team's in-game roster to hit in place of the pitcher. So not having a designated hitter rule, which happens in the National League, means that the pitcher that day has to hit in their spot. It doesn't matter where they hit in the lineup, but they have to hit that day. Whereas in the American League, another player can hit in place of the pitcher, and the pitcher that is pitching that day does not have to hit. A little bit of history into what interleague play is and when it started. Interleague play is when a team from the National League plays a team from the American League. This is usually done in the form of a series. Usually it's 3 games as of now. And those series are played throughout the year. The interleague play was first introduced in the 1997 Major League Baseball season. Prior to this, the American League and the National League teams only played against each other in spring training, the All-Star game, other exhibition games like the Hall of Fame game, and if they made it to the World Series. This is basically the most important aspect for the opportunity to even do my research to make this possible. So this was very important that the interleague play was implemented, or else my research would not be able to be accomplished. And then, like we went over a little bit, in the league differences, the American League has the designated hitter rule and the National League does not. During interleague play, the home team decides the rule used. So if a National League team is playing an American League team at the National League's home field, there's no designated hitter rule and vice versa. For when I looked into research about the effects of the designated hitter in general, I could not find any research on how the designated hitter affects slugging percentage, or for that matter, any offensive statistic. I did find research involving the designated hitter's effect on number of hits batsmen. So in 1997, Goff, Shugart, and Tolleson found that there is 10 to 15% more hits batsmen in the American League with a DH versus the National League without the DH. In 1998, Klein, Trandell, and White proved their Goff's, Shugart, and Tolleson's research wrong. And then another back and forth in 2006, the correlation was found again by Bradbury and Drinan. And basically what they did is they incorporated for more control variables and found that it was statistically significant. And they found, all these studies found that the designated hitter effect on a hits batsman is considered a moral hazard. Because there wasn't much research in the rule change for baseball, I wanted to look a little into other sports that have different rules depending on the games and leagues and see if there's any research on that. I did a little bit of research into hockey and the different hockey rink sizes, and to see if there was any research based on those rule changes. And one study I found was by Richard Wenberg, and he studied the effect of an ice rink sizes, different sizes, on collision rate and head impacts in elite junior hockey. So he compared the 85-foot wide hockey rink in North American junior hockey to the 94-foot wide Finnish hockey rinks, and then to the standard international of 100-foot wide rinks. And I thought this was interesting because this was kind of like my study in seeing the impact of the different rule changes. How I collected the data. So I got all my data from baseballreference.com. It's a great resource to find all stats baseball. It provides data on all stats for individuals and teams for 100 plus years. I used the batting game logs. Right here is an example. This is a screenshot of the 1997 Atlanta Braves team batting game log. And this is only for the month of April because there's 162 games in a year. So what I did is I took each team's batting game log, the full one, every year from 1997 to 2019, and that is the data I use for my research. And obviously 1997 being the first year of interleague play, so I took that until the current season of 2019. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to collect any data in baseball in 2020 because the 2020 season has been postponed due to COVID-19. A little bit about sabermetrics and what makes all these statistics basically possible. The abbreviation, the SABR, is the Society for American Baseball Research. So basically what sabermetrics is it's the empirical analysis of baseball statistics measuring in-game action and in-game experiences. And this is what gave the opportunity for slugging percentage to become a statistic because, like I said, it's not just batting average where it's just hits divided by number of hits divided by number of at-bats. It's more of a weighted average. And with the in-game experience of was it a single, was it a double, sabermetrics makes this possible, along with a bunch of other statistics for the sport of baseball. If any of you ever watched Moneyball, the movie, Billy Beane, the coach of the Oakland A's, was known to be one of the first baseball coaches to use sabermetrics to bring his team, the Oakland A's, to success. And here is my summary statistics for team slugging percentage. My Y variable was what I could get summary stats for. My other variables used to conduct my actual research were dummy variables. So there's not summary statistics there, but they will be included in the results / analyst analysis section. And that I will be going over in the next slide.
Just for clarification,
yes.
Is there a maximum slugging percentage that's physically possible?
I think what this is there, it would be, there technically is. So the max would be if every single at bat your team had was a home run. Now it all depends on number of at bats too. So I wouldn't be able to give you an exact max number, but if you hit a home run every time, that would be the max slugging percentage you can get. This max right here is just the max out of all the data I collected. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yep.
Okay. Okay, and so the min was 0.0360. As you see, the max was 1.0570 slugging percentage. And here's some of the other numbers. The mean was around 0.4145 slugging percentage. And all this data, like I said, was collected by baseballreference.com, the batting game logs for each team from years 1997 to 2019. Then on to my regression results. So I'll go through each of the variables that I used, and then I will go over which two were the most important in what I was trying to find. So my first variable was home field advantage. This was whether a team was playing at their home field or playing at their like in an away stadium. This was one of the variables that was found statistically significant to have an effect on a team's slugging percentage. It is a negative value because it was found that at away games, there is you have your slugging percentage is negatively affected at away games, showing that there is a home field advantage correlation with slugging percentage. My other variable was interleague games. This compared interleague games team slugging percentage to non-interleague game slugging percentage, so regular games that would be American League versus American League, National League versus National League. This variable, which was my most statistically significant variable in the study, was American League slugging percentage versus National League slugging percentage. That the American League slugging percentage, if you're in the American League, your team slugging percentage is higher than in the National League, which I will get into what that could mean in a little bit. My next variable was interleague games by league. So this was the difference in slugging percentage in interleague games by American League teams versus interleague games by National League teams. Interleague game with DH. These next two variables, interleague game with DH and interleague game with DH and American League team, were the two that I looked at most importantly for what I was trying to look for in the research. Interleague game with DH is gave me what National League teams with versus without a DH slugging percentage was, and compared those two. So that was comparing these teams with the DH. And then interleague game with DH and American League team compared American League teams slugging percentage with a DH versus without a DH. And these were the two most important because these were interleague games, and they compared a team slugging percentage with the rule and without the rule. Neither of these were found to be statistically significant, and that is where I got my results. And then other values, there's my R squared, and there's my number of data points. So a little bit more into what I did find to be statistically significant. Back to home field advantage. So it is found that there is data reflecting that playing at your home stadium can help a team slugging percentage. Slugging percentage, and then I went into why that is negative. And then also my more statistically significant variable, the American League versus National League team. This is just showing that AL team slugging percentage were greater than NL team slugging percentage. When it got to my research, some limitations that I had were some omitted variables that I wasn't able to incorporate due to time constraints were temperature. Warmer temperatures make the baseball travel further, which gives a better chance of getting extra base hits, which obviously helps slugging percentage positively because it's the weighted average. So the more bases, the more effect it has on it. I also was not able to account for the different baseball fields. There is indoor stadiums as well as outdoor stadiums that I could have accounted for, which could affect the team slugging percentage, as well as each field has slightly different dimensions, meaning some fields are bigger than other fields, which could give hitters an easier time to hit a home run, a harder time to hit a home run, which could have an effect on team slugging percentage. And one variable I wasn't able to get working in my code, which was the year versus year, the time series. This basically would account for a changes in a team strength or power ranking per year, and see if that has any effect on just the team being better in an individual year. And I plan on including some of these variables with further research and time. In conclusion, a team's slugging percentage in Major League Baseball is not significantly affected in games when teams use a designated hitter. Like I said at the beginning, I expected otherwise, but because there was no significant effect found, I believe there's no need to change a team's strategy in these games with designated hitters, or I don't believe that Major League Baseball necessarily has to go to a universal rule with all leagues doing a designated hitter or all leagues not doing a designated hitter. If I would have got a different outcome, if I would have seen that the designated hitter did have a significant effect, I would say otherwise and say that I believe that the major league should go to one rule or the other to equalize play, but that's not the case. What I did find out of this, though, that could be important for the major league's future is the league imbalance issue. The American League is stronger than the National League, potentially, in my findings. And could this future studies could figure out why this is the case, and is it worth looking into for viewing purposes and for all games to be equal in interleague and regular play? Also, if there's imbalances, if you help fix the balance, like help fix and bring balance, it could bring more equal interleague games and more equal all-star game. Personally, for my research, because I play baseball, I will reiterate the home field advantage importance to my coach. To do this, I mean, making sure that our team schedules as many home games as possible to put our team in the best scenario for success, especially in terms of offensive output. And also with home field advantage in the PAC playoffs, if you are the first seed, you play all the playoff games at your home field, which would give a potential advantage to our slugging percentage if we could get that first seed and bring the PAC playoffs to Bethany Park. And here are just a full printout on my statistics. Any questions?
So Madison and Mo, you get to ask questions first.
Ethan, do you think that you'll use this like as your senior project, doing more research and testing the other variables that you didn't have time for?
That's a good question. My senior project has more components that might be hard to account for with just like baseball. With the different requirements, I might have to pick something that's more versed in not only math and economics, but also a humanities type of study. But if I could I would like to further my studies if I would be able to incorporate a way to include the humanities in my senior project along with this baseball. So if I could find a way, I'd love to, but if I can, I might have to switch my topic and do the further research on my own time.
Okay. In your data section, did you have to calculate those like for every single team, like all 32 teams, or how many ever teams there are that you said?
So for the summary statistics, like how I found them?
Yeah.
So what I did is once I got every team's game logs into R, I ran all my regression results. And when I went to go make the table, I did the summary command for summary stats. And I was able, because I put every team's game log in every year into a separate data frame, like with all of them combined, I was able to get the summary statistics of that entire data frame, and that ultimately got the summary stats printed out for. So these are the min and max slugging or team slugging percentage throughout every season and every team.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you did it for like just that one team that you had a picture of, or if you did it for all the teams.
No, this right here is for all the teams. That was just a screenshot of the section that I used from Baseball Reference for each team. That was just one season and one team. I think it was Arizona
Oh, okay.
or Atlanta maybe. But did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Mo, any questions?
So far, I don't.
Okay. If you want, anyone, at any time when I start talking to Ethan, feel free to chip in too if we have more questions.
Okay.
All right, Ethan. Let's go back to your regression results. And you can go to your nice, pretty version like you have right now. Yeah.
Right there?
That says home field advantage. What is the variable in your regression? What does 1 mean? What does 0 mean?
For the home field advantage, the 1 was the @ symbol. So the @ symbol, yeah, the @ symbol in the data meant the away teams. Like, so it means like they played away at a different field. And then without the @ symbol was the home teams. That's why it has that negative correlation.
Okay. So that clarifies my question because I was initially confused by the labeling.
Okay. I'll make sure.
You may want to consider either. So mathematically, you could make that a plus sign and it'd be the same answer.
Okay.
It wouldn't make any difference. So let me make sure I'm right. Yeah. But if you were to do that, it would change your constant variable. So actually, don't do that because that would change your constant variable. I would change the labeling then. So instead of calling it home field advantage,
Yes.
Somehow make a label being about that it's the away team disadvantage.
Okay.
That'd be better because if we were to change that plus sign, you'd have to change your constant variable, and instead of doing that, it'd be easier just to relabel it as away team disadvantage.
Okay, and I can further explain like where I got like. Should I explain like the dummy variable, like the @ was the 1 too?
No, you should just explain that when you did your regression,
Yes.
you put in a variable for being the away team.
Okay.
And that this became the away team disadvantage as the title of the variable.
Okay.
Because that'd be consistent with your story, and it'd be much more intuitive for the reader to read. Because right now, especially if someone were to just see this diagram and not know the nuances, that they're going to assume that it actually means that the home team had a disadvantage.
Oh, I see what you're saying because you see that and then you see the negative number.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just clear communication to relabel the name of the variable. Or you could rerun your regression, but change the @ signs in the 0 and the non @ signs in the 1. So it actually is the home field number. And I would rerun the full regression just so you'd have the correct constant, because that would change your constant variable as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's think about this big picture a bit more. So we do see this difference between the American League and the National League.
Yes.
So one thing I would like you to think about is that change in slugging percentage large enough to actually affect the outcome of a baseball game?
Okay.
I don't know. And that's something in terms of putting in context would really help clarify the magnitude of that number. I mean, it's still neat to see that it's there, and we're still going to explore maybe some of the implications, but the impact of those implications are magnified or diminished by how much this actually will affect the outcome of a baseball game. Keep in mind that we're not controlling for anything involving defense of your opponent, but it still would be nice to know, does that change actually result in people winning or losing more games, potentially?
Okay, yeah, I'll look into just kind of research how much of a difference in slugging percentage, like the probabilities of winning.
The other thing I want you to explore, so you came to the conclusion that because your key variables were insignificant,
Yes.
that the designated hitter rule doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to argue that that's too strong of a conclusion.
Okay.
And I'm going to base it on a few key arguments. And please feel free to agree or disagree. But first, put this in context. How many interleague games do teams play?
So currently, because in the past there was all American League teams, I'd have to check the exact year when it switched. Oh, it switched in 2013 so previous to 2013, American League teams played a total of 18 interleague games. All American League teams played that. And then National League teams played at least or at most 15, and then some teams played less. And then in 2013, when the Astros went to the American League and evened out the two leagues, they play 20 each.
Okay.
So there's 20 interleague games per team.
And are those spread throughout the season, or are they at a particular time of year?
They're spread throughout the season, I guess before playoffs and stuff like that. So they're 3-game series. So you play a 3-game series. When I was looking at the data, I don't think there's any exact pattern. I know teams schedule things maybe similar each year, but I didn't see any pattern in like when exactly they play them. But I'd see like I'd see a 3-game series and then not see one for a little bit and then another 3-game series, or I saw back-to-back interleague 3-game series. I don't think I saw any data that had more than 6 interleague games played in a row for any team.
And so we could see these sort of games in the first month of the season then.
Yes, they start as early as that, and then I think they go as late into like right before playoffs would start.
Okay. So I'm asking these probing questions for a reason.
Okay.
And that is, we do see a difference between the National League and the American League in slugging percentage. So that still begs the question, why? Is that we can't say it's the DH rule itself, because when you're doing your comparison, the way you are controlling things, really what you're asking is, when I look at National League teams, does their slugging percentage change when they play with a DH and when they don't? Yes. And when I look at American League teams, does their slugging percentage change when they play with a DH and don't? And specifically, you're looking at games only when they're facing another opponent who's from the opposite league, whether they're in the American League facing the National League or as a National League team facing the American League.
Yes.
And what you're finding here is that in that sense, there's no difference, but it might be across 20 games. You don't see the difference in play. Let me put this better. That the effect of the designated hitter might actually be in your American League versus National League. You have to ask yourself, why is there that difference? Is it purely from the composition of the rosters?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's the case, then is it possible that the National League is not putting together the optimal roster to win games? That they might be mentally making a strategic decision that's hurting their team, at least in terms of offensive production? Or are we seeing a situation where it does affect slugging percentage in the big picture? So while it doesn't affect slugging percentage when you compare a National League team in either situations, it may be possible that if we had had that National League team play with the designated hitter rule across the entire season, the cumulative effects may have had a change in their slugging percentage. I think part of the reason why people are concerned about slugging percentage with and without the DH rule is what it means for wear and tear on pitchers' arms, or what it means on the optimal batting lineup. And those questions I don't see as being resolved. And notice that those questions could even offset each other. So maybe we aren't seeing a difference, not because again there's a difference, but it could be that let's see. One story is slugging percentage isn't different with both rules because while there may be better hitters with the designated hitter, there may also be better pitchers because my pitching strategy is not being altered by my hitting strategy. And it goes the other way around too. The reason why the slugging percentage may not be affected when there is no designated hitter relative to designated hitters because while my hitting is no longer as good, my pitching is also worse as well. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions here about, if there is no difference, where no difference comes from. And also there's a possibility that there potentially is a difference, and that's what you're seeing in the American League versus National League variable, but that difference only occurs across a large enough data sample, instead of just 20 games, a large enough data sample that would affect overall fatigue, if it's a fatigue issue.
Okay. So basically, like for my conclusion, it'd be too much to say that there's absolutely like no like point in changing the role. Like I should talk about how what you just talked about, the potential for all that. And also if it's hard to tell because there's so few interleague games still, basically.
Well, it's okay to come out with a position saying that the evidence here suggests to you that there's no point in changing the rule.
Mm-hmm.
But then you should point that out that it comes with caveats. And those caveats include, well, the difference in slugging percentage might not be apparent unless you play a large enough number of games if it's being driven by fatigue. That could be one story why the American League is overall has a higher slugging percentage. It might be that you might argue it still doesn't matter, but I can't tell you exactly whether that's because things here are being balanced out by difference that pitching quality, hitting quality story that I mentioned earlier, where yes, hitting's worse in overall quality, but you don't see that in slugging because pitching's also worse in the National League because of how you have to adjust and change your rotation in response to batting situations. So just to emphasize that there are these potential unanswered questions, but it doesn't mean you didn't update what you thought is going on. I mean, it's clearly an indication that it isn't strong evidence that the DH matters. Like this evidence does allow you to shift your prior opinion of what's likely. And that's good. You should still go out there and say that.
Okay.
But you should also point out what other things could lead you to updating again. Or what are nuances are important to consider. You took a strong position that you don't personally care about changing because the slugging percentage isn't very different. I mean, in your evidence, it's either not different at all because of the rule, or if we do see differences because of leagues, that's just something like a roster composition.
Okay.
Which could suggest that maybe the National League has not had the optimized roster for within their own league itself. That's a possibility. That they might be better served by thinking more like the American League and how they construct their roster. Now, we put that as caveats because we're only looking at slugging percentage right now, and we're not accounting for other skills of baseball players that make them valuable.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to point out, you mentioned your year control. So tell me what that year control is. Like in your data set, what would that year control look like?
So that was like what it would have looked like.
Like if you were to include it, because especially for like Madison Mo, they don't know what you're doing. Could you tell them what that year control would look like if you were to include it?
Okay, so
not necessarily its spec, but how you would put it in the data set.
Okay. Yeah, so what I would have done is in R, I would create a series of dummy variables for each year that would be a 1 if it was in the year, I guess, stated in the code, but I do it for each year. So if games in 1997 would have a 1 in the column with 1997, but then a 0 for all other years. And then I do that for each year. So 1998 would have a 0 in all the 1997 years, but it'd have a 1 when the teams were playing in 1998. So this basically what that would do is compare basically the power ranking of all, like it would control for the power rankings of each year. So like all teams, you could in like sports, like you could say 1998, like these teams were just better than the 2001 team and stuff like that. So that's what basically it would control for.
And let's clarify that statement. So when you say quality of teams, you're referring to teams generally as a group, not specific individual teams.
Yes, that'd be the entire league.
Okay, so that's an important nuance there, because when you said it, people might have mistakenly thought that what you meant was it controlled for how good the New York Yankees are that year, and not about how good our hitters across the entire Major League Baseball are that year.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's guys, the entire major leagues in that specific year.
But it's actually controlling for a little more than that. So this I want you to also realize, it's not just controlling for hitter quality, we'll call it for now.
Yeah.
But it's also controlling for, relatively speaking, pitching quality and defense quality. We don't know which exactly are we talking about. We don't know if the hitters got a bunch really, really good or defense got really bad. That could have happened. We don't know if there was a change in the rule book that favored defense over hitting or hitting over defense. For example, they've raised and lowered the mound, I believe, in this time period. We had the discovery of certain types of shifts on the playing field are actually a lot more effective than we realize. And if that was systematically done across the league, then that year control variable was sort of control for that. And so it's capturing more than just quality of hitting, but it's really the relative quality of hitting versus defense. And that includes a variety of factors, where it includes discovering that certain bat swings are more productive, or changes in the composition of the ball, change the way umpires are calling balls and strikes, changing in the level of the pitching mound, changing defensive technique and defensive strategy. It sort of captures all of that. It doesn't tell you to separate it, but your goal wasn't to measure the effectiveness of those strategies. Your goal was to measure the importance of the DH itself. So as a control variable, it should be sufficient, but in terms of what it's controlling for, it's controlling for more than what you're initially emphasizing here. And you want to make sure that that's clear and that comes out in your paper and in future presentations.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure to do that. That makes sense.